Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to St Mary's Vicarage on this Tuesday, the 12th of May. Another gloriously sunny day outside this morning, though I think the temperature was a bit colder yesterday than previous days, quite windy as well. So here we are. Good morning, Annie and Mike. Good morning, John. Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Paul. Lovely to see you. Wonderful, got a wonderful message yesterday, which I posted up onto our Scouts page. I'm just going to find this message here again if I can. And this is, as you know, we did that Scout service on Sunday, what's called Scout Zone. Good morning, Michelle. We did that in the back garden, and that was for our first Woodcuts virtual scout camp. And all of our beavers, cubs and scouts got to renew their promises. And in the course of that talk, I did mention the scout troop that were based in Watchfield, which was my previous parish. And the actual Scout HQ was actually situated inside the Defence Academy, the military college there. So it was very popular. And what was very interesting, as I said, was a lot of the scouts there were drawn from all over the world. So it really did have this international feel to it. And what was wonderful yesterday is Sandra Michaud, who is Canadian. Her husband is in the Canadian Armed Forces, and one of their youngsters was in the Watchfield Scout Troop. They've been watching the live broadcast and joining us for the daily broadcast as well, though they probably tend to watch some of them a little bit later because of the time differences. Anyhow, Sandra sent me a beautiful message, and she just said this, which I want to share with everybody. I have posted it onto the First Woodcut Scout site, but she said, excuse me, she said, just wanted to tell you how much we enjoyed your Scout Camp virtual service. Simon was a Scout in Watchfield, and since returning to Canada, Cole has been a Cub Scout and Bill a Scouter, in other words, Scout leader. That's the dad. They were all able to join you in renewing their Scout promises. This is a challenging and stressful time, but as we seek out the positives, I can't help but be pleased that as a small contingent from 1st Bay Ridge Scout Troop in Kensington, Ontario, was able to join 1st Woodcuts Troop for worship. This certainly would have been unthinkable in my days as a Girl Guide. So I just thought that was great that while we were making our promises here in Dorset, we had some brother and sister scouts in Canada who were joining with us, which I think just gives that sense of the worldwide scouting movement. Good morning, Paul. Good morning, Lynn. Good morning, Peter. Right, so very interesting day yesterday with all the government ins and outs and new guidance that is coming out. More things were published, and there seems to be a bit more clarity into how this new way of living is going to work. I sort of, I do agree with what the Prime Minister says in the fact that we all need to use a modicum of common sense. However, I have to say 25 years of ordained ministry and working with people of all kinds and all backgrounds, I have often found that common sense is anything but common. So it will be interesting to see what happens there. Good morning, Margaret, my lovely RFO colleague down the other side of Dorset there. Lovely to see you this morning. So yeah, very interesting. Now, as far as churches are concerned, some new guidelines have been sort of put out, and the House of Bishops have had a discussion with this. Now, apparently churches, we're being lumped in the same category as pubs and restaurants. I sort of quite like that. I've always wanted to be a bit of a pub landlord. So that's the sort of category, in a sense, we're being lumped with. And that's partly because, of course, those organisations, pubs and restaurants, are about gathering large numbers of people together. So I did get a few emails yesterday from a couple of parishioners saying, oh, it looks like we might be able to start church services again. That, unfortunately, is not going to be the case in church until July at the earliest. And, of course, even then, we're not sure because, you know, everything is going to be closely monitored as this lockdown is released and the kind of effects that it has. I make no bones about it. I am very fearful of a second spike or second wave, as they call it, to this particular virus. And if you know anything about your history and the history of pandemics, you can almost bet your bottom dollar that there's going to be a second wave. And the slightly frightening thing is that throughout history of different plagues and pandemics, it has been the second wave that has been most destructive. So that I find personally quite alarming. However, we are in a slightly different situation today. We live in a far more modern time than when the Spanish flu pandemic happened back in 1918, etc. And we do have the benefit of modern technology and science on our side. So that gives us a bit of an edge to things. And I know that our scientists and people are working very, very hard to look at finding an effective treatment and possibly, hopefully also finding a vaccine, but that may not be until next year, which does mean it's down to us to look after one another and try and work together to stop the spread of this virus. And in a sense, that is what worries me. A couple of people have commented that, in a sense, you know, clergy shouldn't be criticising the government. Well, to be honest with you, I'm not particularly criticising any political party. I think whoever would be in power now would find themselves in a hugely difficult situation, whatever particular colour rosette they wear. I think that's you know, fair dues. If anything, my criticism or critique, as I would prefer to say, is what I said about human nature. That is what worries me. And in a sense, in that reading that I shared with you yesterday about Paul and Barnabas, who had gone with what they thought was a very simple and clear message to people there, who completely misinterpreted what they had said. That is the fear factor. That's the fear factor for me. In a sense, it's not what the government may or may not say, whatever political stripes they may have. It's how you and I, the average person on the street, will interpret that and see what that gives them to do. And though as Brits, it has to be said, we have been very, very good at the lockdown. Certainly if you've read your papers or looked on the internet, there has been a minority, but quite a sizable minority, who have not observed those rules and put others at risk. This is the bit that worries me about the new instructions. And yesterday I had to go out for a bit, and the road certainly seemed a lot busier as I drove to Blandford yesterday. There seemed to be a lot more traffic on the road. But what was slightly more alarming, in the very short journey of sort of 12 miles, and as from here, people who aren't used to this area, we've got the A345 that runs past Handley. This is one of the main routes that takes you down to places like Weymouth and Bridport and the coastal towns here in Dorset, and you head up to Blandford, our nearest town, and there's a roundabout which takes you off to where you want to go. As I got to that roundabout or that area and drove into Blandford, I counted not one, but 5 camper vans busily heading on their way down to what I presume was probably Weymouth or somewhere like that. That's even before the restrictions are reduced tomorrow. And that's what's concerning me about all of this. So I just want to say that my critique is about human nature, not necessarily government policy. But at the same time, governments, whoever's in power, whatever, has to understand how human nature operates. And it was very interesting yesterday evening when I went to do my prescription run. I went to drop off a prescription to somebody in Pentridge. This was about 6:30, I think, yesterday evening. When I got to the roundabout that's the other side of Handley, up the top there, there was a police car stationed there at the roundabout, and he was monitoring the traffic that was going, obviously, between Salisbury and Blandford, and you know, they've got devices to scan number plates. There was there wasn't a lot on the road then, but my fear is that from tomorrow, that police officer sitting in his car, if he sees you know, lots and lots of people heading to our beaches and to our beauty spots, he's not going to be able to do anything about it. And that's the worry, how we react as people. That's what concerns me. And certainly in other parts of the world where the lockdown has been reduced, those big gatherings of people are what worry me, and the potential that that could spread the disease. But we shall wait and see what happens. On the flip side of that, of course, I'm very pleased that from tomorrow I can get in my car and I can drive to somewhere a bit further afield than Handley to go for a walk. But I think, to be honest with you, I'm going to personally try and avoid what you might term the hot spots or the beauty spots, where a lot of people will go. It's a really difficult one, I think, and I do feel for anybody that's in authority, because, you know, in essence, you're partly damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But my concern is that it's human nature, and the way people can tend to react or feel if they don't have very clear guidance. And I really feel for our police officers who are going to have to try on the ground to manage this. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Dorset this weekend. But I really hope that in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we don't suddenly see the curve going up like this, because lots of people, both locals and both people from further afield, have headed down to our beaches or the New Forest. I know that's in Hampshire or wherever it is. And that, I think, what do they call it? The R number has gone up, and we're in trouble again. So, but we're all walking an unknown road. So it's very difficult to know what's going to happen, but we shall see. Anyhow, here we are today. And as I said, for our churches, it's very unlikely. Well, it's not going. Well, our churches will not be reopening in any form until July at the earliest. The only thing that has been allowed is that certain individuals, clergy, and people who maybe are having to go into the church to do particular jobs to the building or something like that, can now go into the buildings to do those. But sadly, we still can't unlock our church door to the general public. That may come before services are able to take place in our churches. And we shall see. We get constant updates from the Salisbury diocese on this. But as I said yesterday, even when our churches open to the extent that we can hold some form of worship in the building with some kind of social distancing, I'm very, very aware that there will be a sizable group of people, members of our congregation, who will not be able to physically gather together for that worship, because they have to shield themselves from this virus. And that's going to need a bit of thought, how we dovetail together technology like this and services in church. Anyhow, we're working on it. So that's sort of where we are today. We'll see what happens over the course of this week. Very interesting as well. Schools going back too. Mrs. Vicarage, as you know, is a primary school teacher, and that's also another very interesting area of discussion and debate. Lots of mixed responses between parents who need to get their children back to school, want to get their children back to school because they're going to have to be going back to work, but also all the concerns about will they be safe, the concerns about staff and everything. Really, really difficult time for our head teachers and our school governors. So please, over the course of this next few weeks, hold in your prayers our head teachers and school governors, because they are having to sit down and work all of this out and are going to have to make some very difficult decisions as to how to sort of deal with this. It's not going to be an easy one. And, you know, being a teacher is pressurized enough as it is. Being a head teacher these days is pressurized enough as it is. And now our head teachers with their staff have suddenly got this huge extra responsibility put on their shoulders. But if you're watching the news this morning, they had a lovely lady who was a teacher in Denmark, and they have opened the schools in Denmark, and things do seem to be working more successfully, reasonably successfully there. So we can also learn from our brothers and sisters on other shores. Anyhow, hair clippers, as I said yesterday, as you can see, it really is getting a bit crazy now. We are in the process of setting up a Just Giving site so that people can make donations to the church, our two churches here, that's St Mary's and St Andrew's. Pentridge, unfortunately, doesn't have anything like this. We'll have to see what can be done there. But the idea is Mrs. Vicarage is going to share me at some point, maybe later this week or possibly early next week, when we're up and running. And what I'd like people to do is to metaphorically buy your vicar a haircut. So if you want to sponsor me for having my head shorn on a live stream by Mrs. Vicarage, then once the Just Giving site is up, I'll send you the link. And if you feel able to, then please sponsor me for that. That will be great. Should be a bit of entertainment. I think we'll probably do it as a sort of an evening thing, maybe a Friday evening or something, so you can all be holding a nice glass of wine or something like that. I'll probably need a couple of stiff gins before we do that in any case. Lovely people joining us. Morning, Danny. Morning, Lauren. Mary, it's lovely to see you here live with us, and fantastic news that you're back home and recovering from your op. All our love to you, Mary, and really pleased that you're safely back home with us here in Handley, and I'm sure neighbours are looking out for you and such like. But you know, if you do need anything, do just give us a ring. Good morning, Craig. Lovely to see you. Good morning, Millie, and good morning, Nigel. Lovely to see you this morning. So we moved to Rogation Sunday this Sunday. After this, I'm doing a sort of a special recording for with my rural officer hat on for a group of parishes and other benefice over the other side of East Dorset here for their Rogation Sunday. And I've been having a bit of a think about how we'll do the Rogation Sunday service, and thinking about how we managed to do the Scout service outside last Sunday. If I can, and the weather seems to be okay, I'm looking at the weather forecasts for the weekend. I may well try and do a Rogation Sunday service outside, and I might try and do it on the front lawn of the vicarage. And then what I might suggest is that if you're, we can't, you know, gather together in that sense, but if you are walking through the churchyard or coming up through the footpath here at 10 o'clock next Sunday, and observing social distance, and you want to sort of stand there for the live broadcast, as we did for the VE Day remembrance thing, that would be that would be great too. So that's Rogation Sunday, thinking about our farmers and creation and our communities. So let's move to our Bible reading today from John's Gospel, John 14, verses 27 to 31. Probably quite a familiar text to many of us, particularly the first verse, which is often the end of a reading that's sometimes used at funerals. Jesus said to his disciples, "Peace I bequeath you, my own peace I give you. A peace the world cannot give, this is my gift to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid. You heard me say, I am going away and I shall return. If you love me, you would have been glad to know that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. I have told you this now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you may believe. I shall not talk with you any longer, because the prince of this world is on his way. He has no power over me, but the world must be brought to know that I love the Father, and that I am doing exactly what the Father told me to do." This is the word of the Lord. That sort of opening phrase, I think, is wonderful. Peace I bequeath you, my own peace I give you. A peace the world cannot give. This is my gift to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid. Very comforting words at this time. And I think that's an interesting thing that Jesus says, that the peace that he offers us is not the peace that the world offers. It's a very different kind of peace, a very deep inner peace. And it's been interesting. One of the things I've picked up from friends on Facebook and such like, and maybe you've experienced this, people have said they've been having some quite interesting and strange dreams over this lockdown period. And of course, psychologically, dreaming is a bit like our sort of mind. It's like a pressure valve. And when we're under stress, having dreams and such like helps deal with that. That's going back to my A-level psychology days, I have to say. And it can, helps us deal with that. And that's certainly been my experience. I've had some very vivid and quite unusual dreams over this period. And that's because I think of the stress factor. And wherever we happen to be, I mean, in one sense, being up here in the vicarage and that and such like is not particularly stressful. I'm not facing the same stresses as nurses and doctors who are going into hospitals, or people who are working in our care homes, or those who are physically having to go back to work today, maybe having to get on a tube train and such like. But those stress levels are there, and they're very, very real, and they can have a very real effect on us. And of course, they can be cumulative, and that's probably, in a sense, what all of us are experiencing. And it's a very important thing to try and understand this and try to get to grips with. And actually, one of the most important ways of dealing with stress is actually being able to talk to each other. So, of course, we sort of got a double whammy, because the one thing that would be helping us to deal with the stress is the one thing that we can't do, which is get together, sit around a table in our local pub with a pint and chat to our friends and people like that, particularly if you are living on your own. So in a sense, it's great that modern technology can help with that a bit, and we can talk. And I think it really is important that if you are feeling the stress starting to overwhelm you, and I know sometimes we do have this sort of British stiff upper lip mentality where we say, well, it's my life's fine, I'm not anywhere near I haven't got the kind of problems that other people are having. That may indeed be true, but stress is very real for each individual person, and it's really important that as individual people we deal with the stress and worries that we may have at this particular time. So if you do need to speak to somebody, you can always pick the phone up to me. I have my number if you want to do a face-to-face, FaceTime conversation. I'm very happy to do that. In Handley, the Handley support group, we have our wonderful phone buddies. There are lists of people, and the telephone numbers have gone out, who you can telephone to speak to and have a conversation with if you're worried about things. I know several of our phone buddies are listening here this morning. Thanks for the work that you do. That's absolutely great. But coming back to this inner peace that Jesus offers us, it always reminds me of the miracle of Jesus calms a storm. You know, when the disciples are in the boat and it's rocking backwards and forwards and the water's coming in and they're all panicking. And Jesus is asleep at the front of the boat when this is all happening, and the disciples are in terrible panic. And in the end, they go and wake him up. And he sort of chastises them a bit, which is a bit harsh considering they were absolutely terrified and all thought they were going to die and drown. And he sort of says, "Oh, you of little faith." But I think that's an indication of the kind of peace that Christ carries, because he is God and he is absolutely one with God. And the closer we move to God, the more fear and anxiety is pushed to one side, because in a sense, as Jesus says, we're gathered with God, we're held by God. And I've often thought that the miracle is also a good example for us of how Jesus can calm our inner storm. So, you know, particularly now as the lockdown is changing and all the anxieties that I've shared, the ones I have, the anxieties I have, which are very real, anxieties I've got about Kate going back to school, all that sort of thing. This inner churning, this inner storm, that's when we need to come to Jesus and to just be still and to pray. And I do absolutely believe then that Jesus will calm the inner storm of our souls. He will reassure us that we are completely and unconditionally loved by God, and that he is walking with us. And that really can help to calm the storm that is within our souls and the worries that we have. Those words again: peace I bequeath to you, my own peace I give you, a peace the world cannot give. This is my gift to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid. Amen. I think that's a beautiful phrase. So back to the Franciscan rule of life. We're on to the third aim of the order, which was to live simply. Excuse me. And yes, as I said, this is one of the areas as a Franciscan, and I know lots of Franciscans struggle with this, that I find quite difficult, this idea to live simply. My lovely friend Laura from Switzerland reminded me, of course, of my love of shiny red sports cars and things like that, which is very true. And I said about, you know, what are the things that you might find difficult to give up? I think I mentioned this a while back when I was talking about desert island discs, you know, the one item of luxury, if you do desert island discs, that you'd better take with you. I think I preached on this at a family service or breakfast church. And, you know, what would your one luxury item be if you were marooned on a desert island? If you had to get rid of everything else, what would your one luxury item be that you would take with you? And I had a big think about this when I was writing that address several months ago, and I looked at all the stuff I had, and actually in the end I decided the luxury item I would take would be my camera and lots of rolls of film, because what I would do on the desert island is I would record each day. I would record the sunrises and the sunsets and the beauty of nature around, so that eventually when somebody got to the desert island and maybe just found my my skeleton lying there, they might find a camera and lots of rolls of film that had somehow recorded a story. So that would be my luxury item. Anyhow, we're on to day 12 now. The third aim of the order continued, and just a reminder, the third aim is to live simply. Personal spending is limited to what is necessary for our health and well-being and that of our dependents. We aim to stay free from all attachment to wealth, keeping ourselves constantly aware of the poverty in the world and its claim on us. We are concerned more for the generosity that gives all rather than for the property in itself. In this way, we reflect in the Spirit the acceptance of Jesus' challenge to sell all, give to the poor, and follow him. And again, I think that picks up on what I said yesterday, that question that is good to ask ourselves: do we own our possessions or do they own us? If we own our possessions, we're able to get rid of them and give them away freely. They don't cling to us. But if our possessions own us, then we're not able to do that. And it's an interesting thing to reflect upon. Anyhow, I hope you have a really good day today. Nice sunny day, though I think it's a bit colder. I've got to go and record another broadcast now for these group of parishes for their Regation Sunday, and I look forward to joining with you again tomorrow. So I hope you have a real blessed day with whatever you're doing, and I hope that inner peace that Jesus offers you today is there. Let's just finish with the grace. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. And may the peace of the Lord be always with you. Amen.